It's always such a pleasure to watch that video. I've seen it like 50 times, and so I'm really thankful to have you here, David. Reverend David Wu was raised in Los Angeles, and he is the founder of Burning Pride Meditation, a Buddhist recovery fellowship for Asian Americans. He also volunteers as a counselor at Nanum, a faith-based residential addiction treatment center located in Koreatown, and previously served as a chaplain at Homeboy Industries and as a mindfulness meditation facilitator for youth serving sentences at juvenile incarceration facilities. Reverend Wu received his ministerial ordination at the Taego-Zen tradition and chaplaincy endorsement from the Bodhiana Buddhist Chaplain Fellowship. I did it. He formerly graduated from USC with an MFA in cinematic arts with his thesis documentary focusing on Asian American gangs, and is currently a doctoral candidate in Buddhist ministry at the University of the West. And so, David, it's good to see you. I want to turn to you. I know that for many years, you were a chaplain at Homeboy Industries, accompanying gang-involved and formerly incarcerated individuals through their rehabilitation and reentry processes. So what lessons did you learn from that?
Yeah, Sandy, it's great to be with you. It's so good to see you again, and all this fellow cohort right here. And thanks to all you wonderful folks for sticking it out. I'm like last to go. I'm the final obstacle before the reception, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. Yeah, just really honored to be here, and thank you to the Biltmore too for hosting us. Probably maybe lesson. We had a pre-meeting where we all gathered, and a good portion of the time was like Sandy really just each of us like wanted to pronounce everything correctly as best you could, and it was a bit challenging, and it took some time, and it's like, that's probably the first lesson of compassion, is that it's never convenient. It takes time, it takes effort, maybe a little bit of embarrassment and mispronunciation at times, but like that's what we do, and that's what we do together, right? So not too long ago, I've worked with homies before. I still work with homies. That's what we call them. We don't really call them clients. It started with Father Greg, our founder, and not too long ago, there's a young man whose project raised, and he's not even out of his teens yet, and he's already entirely covered in tattoos. And there was one day where he got into a fight with a couple other homies, and which unfortunately happens. And so instead of taking him immediately home, he developed a real taste for noodles, right? And this is Los Angeles. There's plenty of spaces to like get excellent noodles, yeah? So we went to go eat, and I could tell he felt really uncomfortable, really out of place. But we spent our time, and we hung out together. And before I went and dropped him off, I remember he turned to me and he said, "Thanks for not being embarrassed of me." That's what he said. So I think that's kind of what we seek in our practice. It's called tender mutuality, right? So Dr. Q, if you're here, I remember, she's talking about how it's relational, not transactional, right? So maybe that's what we seek. So yeah.
Yes, it's the seeing that it continues to be embodied in how you do your ministries, the community you lead. It speaks of the profound experience of being seen, as we saw in the video, and being accepted, and how that is such a pillar of being healthy, right? It's like knowing that you belong. The idea of knowing that you're not alone. How has Buddhism prepared you to see people and to walk with people in the ways that you do?
Yeah, sure. There's this story of one of the followers of Buddha, and his name was Ananda. And Ananda was perhaps he's recorded as the last of the disciples to reach enlightenment, right? That's maybe like a euphemistic way of saying he was the most dim, right? He wasn't the smartest disciple. I feel great affection and affinity for Ananda, right? So The story goes that Ananda comes running to Buddha one day, and he goes, Buddha, I realized something. And the Buddha says, what did you realize? And he says, I learned that spiritual friendship, relationships, are at least the half of the way to awakening. And then Buddha's reply was, almost. It's not the half, but the whole of the way to awakening. So what Buddhism teaches me, like especially with so much going on right now, especially during an election year, it's like I'm just ever reminded in the practice that whoever is right in front of me is the most important, like whoever that is, right? I don't know if you've heard of Beit Teshuvah. We have a distinguished chaplain, Emma, who's sitting in the back. So it's a Jewish rehab. But if you walk through the doors, the first thing you see is a verse from the Talmud. And it says, whomever saves one life, it's like they saved the world entire. So again, it's that relational piece that just, okay, I'm going to be with you right now. I'm going to do my best to be right where my feet are planted, right? So.
I love hearing a little bit about how Buddhism has really shaped the ways in which you're ministering and how that gives you that ministry of presence. Are there other things that we can learn from Buddhism that can be applied to those that are seeking to bring together communities of belonging?
Yeah, so, perhaps this is like a bit of the elephant in the room, and it's great we have a lot of emphasis on wellness. I would say that, for myself as a Buddhist practitioner, there's this continuing, we have this now history of this co-opting of, Asian practices, things from our culture. Bernie, you were talking about this, right? It's like meditation and mindfulness becoming more and more divorced from Buddhism. And to me, that's not acceptable. It's almost like our practices are invited into spaces, but not our people, right? Our practices are welcomed. Hey, let's do this. But it's like, what about having who is doing it, right? It's like, imagine this university of hip hop and it's all white professors. Would that be cool? I don't think so, right? It's like, okay.
And it happens.
Yeah, right. So it's kind of, coming back to that. But then again, other than that, I'll share this story of, so, it's called mindfulness now, but before it was even introduced to the West, even though D.T. Suzuki and Jodo Shinshu have been here for, centuries. But so Epstein and, they're called the Jubus, the Jewish Buddhists. They learned practices from Mahasi Sayadaw, who was a Burmese monk, right? And they learned how to meditate through him, and they're mostly Western psychology-trained folks. And they said, oh, we need to take these practices to America. It's been so healing for us. We want to share this. And we're like, what should we call this? That's what they were trying to, this is before mindfulness became the term. So they came to Mahasi Sayadaw and he said, we want to bring this, but we want to have your approval. What should we call this thing that we do? And then Mahasi Sayadaw turned to them and he goes, well, you could call it Christianity, right? Because it's this idea of reinventing the wheel, but it's these are all these sacred practices that we can draw from. But of course, understandably, they have conventional hang-ups and histories and memories that we carry. So, we call this intergenerational trauma. But for some of us, especially those that are children of immigrants, I think it's so amazing that your parents are here, by the way. Yeah, can we give them, yeah, definitely. For us, the children of immigrants, it's not so much intergenerational trauma, but intra-generational trauma. It's not so much interfaith, but intra-faith, right? I was raised in so many various things, and trying to make sense of that, it's a practice, not so much an event, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, with that, I want to turn back to all of our panelists. And we've been together hearing a little bit of our contributions, hearing our stories and the ways in which we're bringing wholeness into their communities. And so as we close, I want to hear about the ancestral teachings, the faith practices that are motivating your work. What is keeping your people whole from those faith practices? What are they holding on to in the ancestral wisdom, in the practices of the faith, in the teachings of your faith? What are people holding on to that is keeping them healthy? And where would you like to go next with your organizations? So we'll start over there, and we'll work our way, we'll kind of pivot.
Thank you. It's just been so amazing to hear from all of you, and I'm so inspired. And I just love the interconnection between all of these ancestral practices, and something that we practice as organizers at Freedom Community Clinic is we actually organize according to the rhythms of nature. And I actually want to speak more about this because it is really disrupting the capitalist structure of, and the nonprofit industrial complex and so many of the white supremacist ideas of urgency and that we always need to have to be doing something. So something that we do at Freedom Community Clinic is we really listen and we mimic and we mirror the rhythms of nature in our organizing. So, for example, in winter, even though it's the Gregorian New Year, we are not launching anything from November to February. We're actually doing what nature is doing. We're doing deep root work. We're doing deep rest, deep hibernation, and what that also means is we're doing a lot of behind-the-scenes strategizing and review of the last year. And even within my own self, I feel this anxiety and this, are the grants due, or are we going to be able to, are people still going to, listen to what we have to do with the programs? We are actually, the more that we've tuned into those rhythms, the more it's allowed us to flourish and do this sustained work. And so, for example, our grand opening of our pharmacy and apothecary very intentionally was the weekend of the spring equinox. And that was such a perfect timing because we took so much time as a team to review the foundations that were cracks and that, weren't perfect. And we needed that time as a team to do the root work. And so spring, summer, we're popping off, we're booty popping, we're doing a lot of beautiful launches in the community. But that's also because we do that root work in the winter, and we make sure we mirror that, even if it's really difficult in the midst of deadlines and external pressures. And then also, in addition to mimicking nature and the rhythms that we organize, we also, because there are seven of us, we do an inhale. I would describe it as an inhale-exhale. So if some of us are inhaling and more active in our programming and in our roles, a lot of us have our own exhales, whether it's like a personal just life journey that you have to address or just stepping back from the organizing work. It allows us as a team to really, I'm a salsa dancer too, so we dance with each other. So we allow that to be an inhale-exhale, and that has been huge for our friendship, for our organizing, and I think it really has allowed us to, again, see land as an example of how we can actually mirror that in our practices. So that's one of the big things that I think I really want to touch on, because I think the more that we've tapped into that, we just are able to really fuel that fire now that it's spring, now that it's summer, and find it. We talk about burnout and wellness, but I think the more that we've done this, nature's really smart. Nature's that girl. So, yeah.
Yes. Working at a different rhythm than the one that our capitalist society that is on production makes us go to.
I think the one, here you go. I think what I want to lift up is this idea of, and it's shared idea in so many indigenous traditions, of oneness. Like, what does it mean for us to live in this circle, right? It's not about hierarchy. It's not about who's the leader or competition. I need to shine more than you, or I'm going to shrink. But it's like everybody has a point on the circle, and and that's accountability, and everybody is seen, and everybody has a unique contribution. And so if one steps out, it affects the whole circle. And how do we lead and how do we move, how do we heal in that way? And there's integrity in this circle, right? That we see each other and we see not just you, but we see your whole line, of ancestors. So the circle's big, and then I love that kind of that flow of, so how do we share this work together in this circle, and that the roles are fluid depending on the time, the season, the gifts, the expertise, and that there's such diversity in the circle, right? It's intergenerational, so we have elders in the circle, we have younger folks, we have children. So, how do we create this circle where not one voice is more valued than the other, but we really need to see each other? And that in the circle, we are modeling what we want to manifest in the community. And so the inner work is just as significant as the external, right? So there will be seasons when within the circle, if somebody is going through a lot, then everybody in the circle is like, this is where we pivot and we direct our attention and energy into tending to what's happening internally instead of produce, right? And so it is that kind of rhythm. And I think there's something that's also really this kind of indigenous wisdom of it's always about relationship. It's not about production. It's not transactional. The medicine that we carry is not meant to be mass-produced, but it's about relationship and it's reciprocity. Right, so much of what we talked about in this group, right, of people who are holding this, and our lineage carriers of these medicine is that we want to be generous because of where we're at. There's forced migrations, there's people who have been displaced, like internally displaced, and, so we're coming from all over, and we're coming from all over the place in this one circle. And so how do we manifest the medicine that we carry in 2024 in the circle and the circle that we impact, right? And that requires creativity and discernment that is not fixed, right? It's never fixed, right? And so how do we do that, but with integrity? Because there's so much appropriation, right? There's so much appropriation of all the medicine that we bring and commodification. Even within our own communities, within BIPOC communities, sometimes we're a little sloppy. So how do we create this reciprocity with the medicine, this ongoing relationship that is about accountability, that is about reciprocity and generosity, right? Let's keep sharing, but let's keep the integrity and keep the honor, right?
Love that holding of circles. Thank you. So what faith practices are sustaining your communities, and how do you hope to?
I know that my mom and dad, they would get up like 3 a.m. for early morning prayer. And I would have to say that New Year's, there are some mega churches where they literally have to arrive at church by 3 a.m. to have a seat in the pews because they plan for the upcoming year as well. So I have to say that tradition of early morning prayer, although I don't get up 3 a.m. or as such, but it's something that I know that our community holds dear. There is also, again, what is called 통성 기도, which means like unity, like crying out prayer. That also is practiced in our community as well. I think when we say ancestral, for me, it's a little bit foreign for me. I have tremendous respect and pride in my identity as a Korean American, and also the fact that Korean Americans actually Koreans sends out the greatest number of missionaries after the United States. And so again, there is that type of heritage. My mom's family work with U.S. missionaries to set up churches in South Korea and even beyond. So for all those kinds of reasons, again, I have a great appreciation of the work and faith. And I would have to say that Korea was under Japan's rule for 36 years in a very harsh setting, but it was actually Korean Christians that really led the movement. And so, in particular, Korean women, Korean American women who sold kimchi in their churches to raise funds to do so. So again, there's this great legacy. I don't know if I can share what is my aspiration. Yes? So my aspiration, my original verse, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and praise your Father who's in heaven. I think when people are touched by love and good service, that people seek to know who you are and know the God that you believe in. And unfortunately, I think in this country and in most seminaries, the religious training does not equip pastors and church leaders how to pack it. They do good works, but they don't know how to package their good works in a way that the world can recognize and see it, and also leverage outside resources to really have increased impact. So for my dream is that our C2 leadership training that's on your tables, that equips pastors, will be in every seminary across the country, and that we could also train current faith leaders who have not received that training so that they could be that light in the world as God intended, not so much that they're not, but that it's visible and recognizable, that people will be drawn to that light. And in turn, by doing that like the home ownership, every church could do that home ownership program, could do the paid youth internship program, could do clean energy program. I mean, there's so many, and a lot of the resources are on the table, so that, again, that it could touch lives and really help people.
Okay, thank you for the question. I think about the word migration. And my grandmother and grandfather were the first to migrate to this country, although there's a whole history of other folks who had been here already. But migration is not a bad word. It's actually a good word. It's a word that says courage. My grandma said it took courage for us to come. It took courage for us to dream. It took courage for us to leave what we know to what we don't know. So if anything, I say what I want to make sure that we understand is that people have come because they're people of courage. I think about the hospitality. My grandma would say, donde comen dos, comen tres. Where two eat, three eat. There's room for all. There is more than enough. We have to have a mentality that really there is room for all of us at the table. There's room for us to be able to share. And then the last one is, sometimes more is not better. When we chase the American dream, sometimes we forget to live today because we're ready for tomorrow, and everything's about tomorrow, but we forget to be neighbors. We forget to be present. Thank you for the words. We forget to be real. We forget to heal. We forget to love. We forget that we belong to each other.
Yeah. So in the last 5 minutes that we have, maybe just share in a couple of words, like what is it that you, that is sustaining your organization, if you want to share that, or share your aspiration for your organization. I know that you got to share some of that, but maybe just in a few words, what is sustaining your people? How do you want to see it grow? David, could we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Oh, sure. I'm up here indoors doing these really amazing stretches, and it looks so inviting. I just want to get up and stretch. So that's probably what I'll be doing immediately after. It's the first time seeing you and your twin together, by the way. It's been really amazing. Yeah, for us, we're just trying to continue what we already do, and we'd like to kind of open our doors to more folks and have retreats. For myself, just look at the title, Pathways to Wholeness. Thich Nhat Hanh, the late Zen master, he would maybe say, he says, there's no path to wholeness. Wholeness is the path, right? So this idea of this is the practice, right? So something like that. Thank you.
I love that.
Yeah, I think what sustains us is, I think for Puentes, it's the curiosity of our own self-discovery and the discovery in community and with each other. I think one of the questions earlier was also about what is your growth or their sustainability? And sometimes we think because of the world we live in that we think growth means more, like Dina said, right? It doesn't always mean better, but it's how do we grow ourselves? How do we grow with each other? And that is also a form of growth. So how do we welcome that and say, okay, there's 10 of us, there's 15 of us, there's 100 of us, but we know each other. We're growing with each other. We're growing with ourselves, and we're growing with each other. And I think that for me, that is something that sustains us, and the curiosity of where can this go? We're doing great things, but where else can this go? And so living also in just the curiosity of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna kind of combine these two in a really brief way, but yeah, just to say that I think a lot of the work has been informed. My brother and I, we come from a Jewish Moroccan lineage, and so much of the spaces that we do is around radical hospitality. It's around welcome, what you kind of named welcoming in, and anyone to feel that sanctuary. And I think that's just that experience of that sanctuary again and again is what sustains us and the relationships that are cultivated. So the relationships are and how they ripple out.
Yes. Well, we want to thank all of our panelists that are here. Thank you for helping us get a little bit closer into wholeness. So thank you so much.